Ta-da! We're back on four wheels again, which is nice, isn't it? Bled the brakes through yesterday. So the fix on the master cylinder worked beautifully. Got a good solid pedal, and it is all working. The pressure differential switch down has been rebuilt, no longer leaking. And then I thought, you know what? I'm fed up with this thing just being here. Let's see if we can get it going. So boot floor came back out again, largely because I was struggling with the pump, and the problem I was having with the pump was about earth. So although I thought it was a good earth, it wasn't. So I've created another earth now, so that the earth goes directly from the pump body using a little jump wire, and I drilled another hole into the chassis, and it's the red wire down there is the earth, and the white wire, or the black and then the white wire, is the feed. Now, I don't know if this thing's going to fire up or not. I have just tested, and we are getting fuel through. There's a little bit of fuel there. Let's just check to see if this is cold as well. Yeah, that hurt. So the feed seems to be working. Whether we are going to go and get this thing to work or not, I don't know. I'm not sure I'm going to be asked tonight, but curiosity and all that. So let's give it a go. So basically what I've done is the wire over there, the red wire that goes into a white wire, because let's face it, it's a jump wire. I've taken it straight off the ignition coil. So it's just ignition fed wire. It runs right way through the middle of the car to the back. So what do you reckon? What do you reckon? Are we in neutral? We are. It's not showing much signs of life, is it? Oil pressure though. Right, well it's 6 o'clock. It's a Friday. I'm going to do this tomorrow morning. There'll be a reason why it's doing that, I'm sure. I'll double check over the fuel supply, and then we'll get this thing working. Fan looks nice, doesn't it? Except whoever did the painting on it had filled all the holes up with paint, which then made it a nightmare getting it located. But other than that, it's beautiful, just fucking beautiful. Oh dear, 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 dear. We've still got oil pressure. Just see what the oil pressure is, by the way. Oh, I've disconnected the battery now. Right, so battery reconnected. Quite respectable cranking for a Rover V8. Right, I can smell fuel now. Where's that coming from? Good that I can smell fuel, but it's bad at the same time. So I can smell fuel. The filter leaking. The filter's leaking. Right, well we'll sort that out tomorrow. That's not a horrific problem. I can soon fix that. Right, next day. Bright. Oh my goodness, hickety up it is. So I've had Bob over today, which is why I've not done a huge amount on this. But effectively, I have confirmed that I've got fuel coming through to the carburetors. Dead easy, really, on these variable jet carburetors. Clankety, clankety, clank. Lift up the dash pot, feel the needle. Yeah, it's got fuel on it. Okay? When you lift it up, the needle should be wet. But that one might not be. It's just... Yes, it is. No. Okay, so we've got fuel on both needles. So they're both float chambers are full. Neither carburetor is flooding. I pulled the distributor out and I rotated it one tooth. Because when I set the ignition up, because we're at top dead centre at the moment. The easiest way to find top dead centre, by the way, loosen off plug number 1. Don't take it right out, just loosen it off. And when you get towards top dead centre, cranking the engine over with a spanner, you hear it hiss. So you'll know you're on a compression stroke on that cylinder. Everything else really is pretty much as was. So I've reconnected my fuel pump back to the positive side of the ignition coil. And the only reason for that is that there's a wire that goes to the positive side of the ignition coil there. So I reckon give it a go. What's the worst that's going to happen? Okie dokie. Keys. Lord. Beginner's mistake. Right, and power. Connect it up. The lead. I confirmed that I got a good spark yesterday, so I know that the low tension side of everything was working, which is why then I thought, do you know what? I'm just going to double check the ignition timing. So, give it a little bit of choke, but it should, in theory, at least make an effort to fire. Right, bit the throttle. Good oil pressure. Showing a lot of signs though, is it? Oh. Backfiring through the inlet. I'm going to double check that ignition again, because the popping you can hear through the throttles is likely because the ignition is not correct. Just disconnect the power for a second. Get my screwdriver. You can't even watch this. Right, okie dokie. So, where are we? Let's, first and foremost, you're looking over there, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull number 1 lead off and disconnect number 1 plug. And just loosen it. Don't take it right out. Right, that's done that. Then what I want to do, clankety clank, like clank face, is what are you looking at? Right, let's get all this lot out of here. I've got a socket. So the crank bolt on this thing is not the one with the dog leg on it. It's not the one with the starting handle, so it's a 24mm socket. It sounds like it wants to go though, which is good. Means we're not far out. I suspect we're going to find we've got fueling. Is going to be the crux of the problem. It could just well be that the throttles aren't open enough in order for it to do what it needs to do. So the next thing I then do, distributor cap off. Now this blue cap is fiendishly bloody tight, and I don't know why. Right, okay, we're actually more or less at top dead centre. Look at that. So I'm going to crank it backwards a little bit. A funny place to stop. Top dead centre. Right, let's just do a couple of turns. I'll put a new chain on this thing, but right, now cranking the right way. Hearing no compression. Have you put the distributor in 180 degrees out, Richard. That would be a schoolboy mistake, wouldn't it? Right, so we'll carry on cranking. Right, well that didn't make any noise at all on that rotation. So we'll carry on round towards top dead centre. Right, now you can hear it. Hear it? Let's have the light over here. Just so I can see the timing marks. Here we are at top dead centre. Okie doke. So that's top dead centre as heard by the compression on number 1 plug, which I can now do up. And the good news is the distributor is pointing at where the number 1 plug lead goes. So it could just be a fine tuning of the distributor location. Right, just see if we can get that down. Oh, there we go. Right, that's done that. And now, let's look here. Number 1. Number 1 back on. Number 2 if it was a stag. Silly boy. Right, number 1 is there. I'm going to rotate the distributor like that. Put the cap back on. Oh my goodness. Right, cap is back on. Everything's out of the way. Carbs are not flooded. Let's give it another go. Clankety clankety clank. Look, clank face. So all I've done there is rotate it. Checked the ignition timing again, and then rotated the distributor to be a little bit more tight. It's flooded now, unfortunately. What I might do is disconnect the fuel pump and run it with the throttle open for a minute. So fuel pump disconnected. Just check this starter mode, it's not getting too warm down here. It's warming up, we'll give it a break in a second. Just see, with no fuel supply, how we go on. Come on, Joe. It was flooded then. Right, so we've got no fuel supply now, so let's reinstate the fuel supply. Obviously we have an exhaust leak somewhere. I need to find out where that's coming from. So reinstate the fuel supply. I might just turn up the throttle speeds just a little bit. I've got a screwdriver around somewhere. Oh. Is this one doing anything at all? I mean, I've got no link rod behind these either, which is a bit of a faff, largely because the wrong one was fitted. Right, let's give it another go. Power on and fuel. Running very rich. I can't get the idle speed high enough to get the out while it's running to adjust the ignition, so I'm just going to have to do it a little bit at a time. Obviously I'm in the workshop at the moment as well, so I don't want to gas myself out either. Bear in mind it's cold as well at the moment. The engine is cold. It seems any attempt to use the choke has been causing it difficulty. So again, we'll just move about another degree. I think the carbs are just running too rich. I think what I'm going to do, because that's not bad actually. There's a lot of fucking around, but at least we know it runs. I need to get it, the missing link rod is my biggest problem here, so what I'll probably have to do is go and rob the link rod. And the link rod, by the way, for you gents and ladies that don't know, connects up the two carburetors. So we've got the throttle cable goes in to one carburetor, and the other carburetor is linked to the first. Now at the moment I'm only using this carburetor. That one is running at idle, and this is why it's struggling to idle. It should run. If the carburetor's in a good state of tune, it will run on one carburetor. Not beautifully, but it will run. Right, I'll just go and rob a link rod, I think. They're over there. I've been through all of my stash of everything and I can't find one anywhere. But I want to get this moving so I can tune it up tomorrow. Oil pressure went up to about 70 psi, which is too high for my taste. So I might have to double check that the pressure relief valve is working properly inside the pump. That's too high oil pressure for one of these. So it could be that the pump needs to come apart again, but you don't need to take the whole pump apart. You just undo the side and get the pressure relief valve off. Hopefully now, on second start, it's going to be a little bit better. And I've got the doors open to see if we can actually drive this thing out. Let's see if we can adjust this so we can actually see what on earth is going on. There we are. That's better. Okie doke. Let's give it a go. Oh my goodness. So, first test, I think really, work. So we are in high, we're in overdrive. Yes, the clutch works. Now, can we get this out of here? Ain't going to start today, is it? I've got both carbs linked up now as well. Oh, it moved. Exhaust is still leaking though. I don't know where that exhaust is leaking from. I thought it was the downpipe. Right, okay. Well, that's mercifully gone quiet on us. So the main reason for bringing it outside was to stop the carbon monoxide poisoning while I do things like ignition timing, which should make it a lot easier to start, and then tune the carbs up. I couldn't tell you where it was leaking from. Let's see if we can get it started up again. It should start relatively easily now. Now, right, okay, what I'm going to have to do, I think, is park you over here, because otherwise I'm going to waste half my day walking around with a bloody camera, videoing stuff, rather than actually getting on with what it is I'm being paid to do. How about that? Foremost, I want to get this ignition timing right. Obviously with the red fan, that's going to be fun, isn't it? Oh, I found out where the coolant leak's coming from. There's a bolt missing up here. That's a bit thick, isn't it? There's a bolt missing on the top there. Not quite sure what's going on there. I might have to tap another thread in there and drill the hole a bit larger. Let me do things like that first of all, because I'm just going to waste a world of antifreeze. And then I'm going to get this thing warmed up and set the ignition timing, because it's going to run a shitload better then. And obviously we are a fair way out at the moment, but as you can see, it's starting a lot easier than it was yesterday. And it's not flooding, it's almost like it's running out of fuel, or the ignition's failing. So let me sort out a couple of these minor issues. That water leaking is pissing me off, and then I'll come back. I think you don't need to watch me do that. I say it all the time, but you don't. Yes, car's out of the workshop. The observant amongst you will notice that the car is pointing the opposite direction. The other, and even more observant of you, notice that there's an enormous pool of fluid underneath the front of the car, which is red. Ah, well, because that's directly below the steering box, which is refurbed, then that's going to be power steering fluid. Oh, can't be a steering box failure. I've only just got this thing. Oh, dear, 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 dear. No, it's the pipe. Look at that. I don't know where these pipes come from. They're customers. If it's the low pressure pipe, I'm inclined to chop whatever this shit is off, because they've clearly clamped it on, and then it's, you can see it probably was clamped on up to here. Anyway, the long and short is I've been for a very, very, very short drive, but in that short drive it's emptied the power steering fluid all up the bulkhead, all around here. Look at it. Ah, you bastard. Abso-fucking-lutely everywhere. This is my I've been having fun days face. Right. Allow me now to elaborate. So as you will have seen, I've been having some struggles really getting this thing running nicely. Exhaust is now resolved, and basically it was just the downpipe seal. I've had to take the downpipe, the Y section off, as I suggested already. Took the Y section off, reseated it. There's nothing particularly tricky about it. Just seat the downpipe first, then put the Y section on, then put the rear box on, and it generally is okay. There is a vibration down there somewhere, but that's all resolved. I've cleaned up 99% of the mess from the high pressure hose explosion. Alternator's now working. That was very silly, Richard. I hadn't noticed, but the wire had come off the back of the alternator. So these early loose alternators need that wire in place in order for the thing to work. It works beautifully now. I've adjusted it to make the belt a little bit more straight. I'm still not convinced it is entirely straight. The bolts aren't perfect, so I might need to just double check that. But at the moment, it's at least the belt's running straight. It was starting to, this brand new, okay, brick part belt, but it was starting to fray along the edges, and you can see there now it's no longer fraying along the edges. So what caused all my bother then? Because you can see now I've got the customer's distributor cap and rotor back on, and I'm still running the coil over there. Well, silly on my part, to be quite honest, and it's silly because I'm not used to basically working with a brand spanking new loom. I'm used to working with looms where I have to chop them around a bit and so forth. So because of that, I've got a brand spanking new loom here, and it's the engine loom part of it, so the bit that runs from up here down the side of the engine and across, blah 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 blah. Specifically this wire here. So this wire, there's two wires here. There's one which is white and purple, and there's one that's pink. So what the fuck? So I go back to the parts manual. Because we're a 1973 car here, we're looking at the wiring diagram for models prior to 1974. Okay. Distributor. Ignition coil, 63 ignition coil. There we are, coil. And then to the coil, we have got a white and purple wire which comes from the back of the starter motor. Okay. This is very, very, very similar to the setup as used on 1973 and onwards Triumph Stags. They've got a ballast wire fitted into the loom. Now you can see also that there's a white and purple going this way, then it goes to white and white and pink, and then it goes to white. Now that should have rung an alarm bell with me there at WK, because WK is the colours that are used on the Stag ballast wire inside the loom, and I hadn't actually noticed that before now. So you can see there's two circles with two little kisses, one inside each of the circles, or crosses if you want to, but it's Valentine's Day today. And then WK, white and pink, and then obviously it connects into the white loom. So all of that will happen somewhere between about, if I can get my camera working, where are you? Right there. About here and there. So somewhere in that stretch, there'll be a connector where it goes from white to white and pink. And then I think the white and purple is just kind of, it's an anomaly in the manual. Now, the reason I hadn't kind of guessed that was because looking at the page, there's no indication that it's got the ballast resistor. Go back to the previous page, which is now for 1975 and onwards, vehicles fitted with the vomiter. And we've got exactly the same setup. So we've got a black wire running from the coil to the distributor. We've got a white and purple wire going to the back of the starter motor. And we've got a white and pink wire attached directly onto the back end of the coil, which then splices into a white. So WK, and then it's got these two circles again with the kisses in them. When you look over here in the key, Eureka resistance wire. Well, there was a Eureka moment yesterday. And the reason there was a Eureka moment was because I'm thinking that when this car is running, and it runs quite sweetly, starts readily, runs for about 30 seconds, then conks out. I think, why is it doing that? Why is it doing that? And then occasionally, if I give it a good rev, it will work. And then sometimes it will misfire really, really badly. Well, it actually is a two-part issue that I've created for myself here. So first and foremost, if I put you on the tripod. Right, so we've got ignition on. I'll get me a little wire, and I'll test the voltage on it. And I'm getting, 12 volts. Well, that's interesting. 12 volts. Can you see the vomiter? Vomiter's right here. You can't see the, we can just about see the vomiter. Let's move the vomiter down a bit closer. So we're getting 12 volts off that wire. You think, well, that's all right. That should be okay. There's no indications there that that is a, what's its name, feed. So if I then pop that onto the ignition coil and now measure the voltage, now I'm getting 4 volts. So I'm thinking, isn't that weird? Maybe there is a high resistance connection. Let me turn the ignition on for a second. Maybe there's a high resistance connection in there. Maybe there is, and it was exactly right. There is a high resistance connection in there. A funny noise. As I pulled the ignition off, the fuel pump stopped working. I can hear the fuel still gurgling through the pipes. So this got me thinking. The way it works, the white and purple, as you know, comes from the back of the starter motor down here, the bottom connector on the starter solenoid. And basically, when you engage the starter motor, it will send a pure, thoroughbred 12 volts straight through to the positive side of the coil, which allows the coil to give itself a super spark. Okay? Super spark then goes directly to the distributor cap and out to the lead, so the engine will start really easily. But as soon as you let go of the starter, it's no longer getting that super boost. So it's then getting a much, much weaker spark. You think, well, why is it doing that? And this is down to this bloody Eureka wire. So the Eureka moment was, in a nutshell, because we're probably going on a bit here, Richard. Do you remember I put the fuel pump off this side of the coil thinking, well, it's a 12 volt feed. That should be all right. Fuel pump run off that. No, it's not a 12 volt feed. So where I thought that the engine was conking out because it didn't have enough ignition, well, it had just enough ignition to run. What it didn't have was enough power to the pump to pump the fuel through to the carburetors. So what it was actually doing was mainly running out of fuel, which is why when I was trying to balance the carburetors, I just could not get them to do anything right. And this is where it ends up being an absolute and utter clusterfuck, because I've assumed that the loom didn't have a ballast resistor in it. There is a ballast resistor in there, and it's the wrong fucking colour. It should be white and pink, because that would have rung alarm bells with me then. But because it's pink, I'm just thinking, oh, whatever. Should have fucking... oh, dear me. Anyway, so what I've basically done there is I've moved the feed for the fuel pump to one of the pure white wires inside the car. Now this then takes me on to a second problem. I've got this very fancy, proper Bosch part number 02211222332 coil. And these are the coils that are highly recommended for all of the Range Rover V8 Range Rovers, but mainly for the EFI reasons. It's a very, very, very good coil. And it runs at quite a low resistance. So if you measure the resistance across the two low tension terminals, you're getting 1.5 ohms or less. Now I was actually getting 1.3 ohms off this one, which would indicate, oh well, that'll run on a ballasted supply. But it's actually not a ballasted coil. It is a 12-volt coil. So I'm actually taking a really good, strong coil and running it at a ballasted supply. Now it says 4 volts on there, but I suspect when I start it up it will run a bit higher than that. But in a nutshell, now, right, because again we're rambling far too much here, Richard. Let's take the vomiter out of the way. Now bear in mind it is a cold start. Oops, just be careful with my nice vomiter. Fuck me, who's tidied the bench up? That is tidy, folks. That is tidy. Ain't going to get much tidier than that. How we can get it going. So basically, now, ignition's running off a ballasted supply with an unballasted coil, and the fuel supply now is running from a good supply. And it should. Cold start. Right, give me a second. I can get the bottle. Choke might bloody work. You never know. Still need to tune these carbs. Now it fucking runs. What a bastard. How annoying is that? Now it runs on that supply. It would run better on the pure supply, and it will rev up. But how sweet is that running? Ignoring the vibration of the exhaust down here somewhere. I mean, that is as sweet as a fucking nut. So yes, be aware of ballast resistors in looms which read 12 volts until they're connected to a coil, and then they don't because they're high resistance. I still don't think that it's right for the coil to be running at that voltage, so I am going to rewire. I'm going to take a white feed and move it across. But that's beautiful. I'm going to sort that exhaust rattle out because that's going to do my fucking head in. Just need to work out where it's coming from. Sweet, huh? I'm going to get down and dirty. Oh my god! Up here. It's actually, I think it's a baffle. Oh, it's back. It is. Your new exhaust has got a bloody wobbly baffle in it. Oh, the car that keeps on fighting. It does love a good scrap, this car, I'll be honest. But, ignoring the baffle rattle, I mean, now I can tune the fucking thing up. Smoke over here, by the way, is just the remains of the power steering fluid leaving the car. So really, all that fucking around was completely and utterly my fault for making assumptions. And of course, my fault means not billable. But learning every day is a school day. Never be so obnoxious that you think you know everything. It's my rule number 2. Rule number 1, don't wipe your arse in a broken bottle. Listen to it. That is a beautiful engine. Really, really, really beautiful. Turn it off for a moment because I want to warm it up next, and I'm going to do the carb tune. Now I know it's bloody running. Now I can do the carb tune because it's not running out of fuel all the time. The problem was I was trying to get it to run such that the mixture goes rich, and then you wind it back and forth until it goes lean. And the problem was because the float chambers weren't filling up, because the fuel pump wasn't running at its full kind of strength, it was constantly running lean. Which was what was causing my problems on the fueling side. On the ignition side, my problem was that I was sapping a whole load of power from the ignition coil with the fuel pump. Silly arse. I don't know. Yeah, so thanks to Paul at ABE, by the way, for telling me that the pink wire on a brand spanking new loom was, oh, you said, oh yeah, that's the Eureka wire. And I'm thinking, Eureka wire, I know that. And that's when we had the Eureka moment.